Two men go into the woods, they meet a bear. The first one quickly takes off his backpack and throws on his tennis shoes. His friend looks at me and says, "Do you really think you can outrun that bear?" He said, "I don't need to outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you." And this is what you need to do with your competition, obviously. Have any competition? Of course you do, especially today. At least 95% of the merchandise you're carrying, somebody else is selling, and more than that, probably. So and I said last week in the very first seminar I did, take off those blinders. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of any of the other retailers, any other businesses in your area or across the globe. It doesn't make any difference. You can gain ideas from them, and you may have to tweak them and tweak them so that they'll work for you, but you can gather ideas anywhere. And as I told you before, I never sit down without having a tablet next to me to make notes. Well, the other night on the news was talking about AMC movie theaters. Now, I don't know if you've seen this. Obviously, most areas, the theaters aren't even opening up. They're not opening up at all right now. But they're opening up to groups of 20 people, $99. Watch all the movies that are out today. Only 20 people can come in, your friends, your guests, whatever. But what a way to at least keep their business going a little bit. And what we look at small businesses today, they're not really a huge business, but you look at the businesses today, 45% of American jobs are from small businesses. And in New York City alone, just New York City, 2,800 businesses have closed since March, and 1/3 will never open again. That is so sad to hear, especially somebody that loves retail like I do. I had my own retail business, a very successful business as well, and I love retail, and I love selling. 160,000 plus businesses have closed nationwide since the pandemic started. How many are going to be able to pivot, turn themselves around, and to be able to get back into business again? And who knows how long that's going to be? Nobody knows. The other night on the news, it was talking about American Booksellers Association. Books are one of the big categories that are doing very, very well now because people want to hold something. Yes, they can use their Kindle, but they want to hold something. Then, as I said before, they can get any recipe they want on their phone. They want to hold a cookbook. So the Booksellers Association, the American Booksellers Association came out with a slogan, October is the new December, because there are going to be supply chain issues. There are going to be shipping issues. In fact, on the news the other night, FedEx has hired 70,000 new employees for this pandemic season. So pay attention to what's on the news and incorporate some of that, into the conversations with your customers. Let them know to shop early. That's what they warned everybody on the news the other day. In fact, I was just telling Jolene before we started on the news feed today that I was looking at, Germans are starting to stock up on toilet paper again, knowing there's going to be another shortage. So, and you can use that as a fun line when you speak with your customers, whether it be via telephone, whether it be Zoom, whether it be, in any of your Facebook Live. Have fun with them. Give them fun information. Don't ask stupid questions. Do not ask stupid questions. Like, think of your typical retail business. You walk in the door and they say, "May I help you?" That doesn't work any longer. And that is not going to work. You go into a hotel, walk up to the front desk and they go, "Checking in?" I mean, that's a stupid question. Another one, you go into a restaurant, table for one. No, have fun with your customers. I was with my daughter and my son-in-law. We were up in Vail, and I live in downtown Denver. And we were up in Vail, and we went to go sit by the fireplace outside. And my daughter and son-in-law went to go grab a couple glasses of wine. Well, there were two young men sitting there by the fireplace. And so I just kind of said to them, oh, where do you guys live? Where are you guys from? And they said, Wausau, Wisconsin. I suppose you've never heard of it. I said, I'm in Wausau all the time. I said, I always stay at the Jefferson Street Inn. And they're, you got to be kidding. And I said, no. And so we started talking about Wausau, and Wausau is right in the middle of Wisconsin. And my daughter and son-in-law come back. My daughter goes, Mother, how can you pick up these young guys? And I said, because I can talk to anybody. And that's what you have to be able to do, to talk to anybody. One of my first visits to India, I did a program for the, excuse me, I'm so sorry, the Indian Retail Association. I worked with so many different firms over in India. I worked with Reebok in India. That was a fun group. But the next day I was having breakfast in the hotel. And this gentleman comes up and he said, Miss Wold, he said, I saw your picture in the paper today. And I said, oh, I know, I saw it. I was kind of flattered. And he goes, did you notice my picture in the paper? And I said, no, I didn't. And he goes, well, look at it. He goes, my picture's twice as big as yours. And he started to laugh and he goes, do you know why? And I said, no, why? He said, because notice I have children with me in my picture. And it got me to think, well, that really kind of makes sense. And on Tuesday, I was working via Zoom with the two owners of Native Life in Browning, it is, right? Browning. And so I was chatting with them about their Facebook Live, because that's one way that they can at least sell some merchandise right now, because they're having a difficult situation with people not being since they're on the reservation, they can't bring people into their store at all right now. And so we're talking about Facebook Live. And so I told them the story about in India. And she goes, you know what? We could bring our puppy on Facebook Live. And every time we do a Facebook Live, it's what Rover is seeing this week, what Rover is getting in the store this next week. And so, incorporate it, have fun so that your customers, get excited when you post something on Facebook Live. Then you've got to know who your audience is. That is the key. We talk about stepping up this customer experience. You've got to step it up to the highest degree right now, because you've got to knock it out of the park is what you have to do now. But you've got to know who your audience is. One of my first visits to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, I was in Surya KLCC. This is a vertical shopping center, 7 stories. And I sat down and was looking at the brochure, letting me know the layout of the shopping center. Because in the shopping center, your market and your pharmacy and everything else is underground in the basement, where your upper end stores are higher towards the top. Very interesting situation. So I'm looking at the brochure of the shopping center, the little directory, and there are 7 Famous Amos cookie stores. And I think Malaysians like Famous Amos cookies this much. And then I realized that Famous Amos is really smart, because Malaysians love fancy packaging. So they may be buying just a little tin of cookies, but what are they paying for? They're paying for the cellophane, the streamers, the balloons, the ribbons. That's what they're paying for. So he got to know his audience before he goes into a different country with Famous Amos cookies. Now, Famous Amos aren't my favorite cookies, and I don't think they're anybody's favorite cookies, and they're the ones in the mini bars, which they've gotten rid of too, all the mini bars and hotels. But he got to know who his customer was, who his audience was. And Famous Amos doesn't own Famous Amos cookies any longer. He's sold out, unfortunately. But then you also have to know not only who your audience is, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know your numbers. And you can share them with your staff. When I had my retail business, we didn't share anything with our staff, but that was years ago. Now your staff needs to know how the store is doing financially. Yes, because they want to help you out. You're all part of a family now. You also need to know your message. I suppose some of you watch Shark Tank. Shark Tank is fabulous, because what I love to watch is how a potential business or a struggling business, or one that wants to grow, presents themselves to the sharks, the venture capitalists. How do they present their business? How many of them know their numbers, their marketing numbers? The majority do not. And how do they explain their business? That is what I find fascinating. And I'll tell you something about Shark Tank. That each one, when we look at this episode of Shark Tank, and if you haven't watched it, watch it. It's worth watching. On the episodes of Shark Tank, we'll see maybe 5-7 minutes of somebody trying to pitch their business. But actually, they pitch it to the sharks 2 to 3 hours. So a long time. But before they even start, they have to stand up in front of the sharks for 5 minutes without saying a thing. 5 minutes. It's a long time. What are the sharks looking for? The confidence. Yes. How much confidence does this person have in themselves, their self-esteem, before they even start? So think about how hard that might be. 5 minutes is a long time. All right, then also, Shu, you need to know, are you trying something that's innovative in your store, or is it distracting to your customers? You know, customers now don't have time. They're not just browsing at all any longer. They want in and out fast. And this is why if you do curbside pickup, that is one thing they've mentioned many, many times on television during the news at night. And I watch NBC and ABC, and they've mentioned how important it is to have curbside pickup right now, because customers want things fast. And it's the way you send them off. If you send them off with a little tote, as a representative of your store, it could be just tied with a little piece of raffia or ribbon or even string. It doesn't even make any difference. If you have a nice little tag on it with their name, and inside you have all of your services. You've included this in some sort of a piece that you can put in their bag that will list all of your services, how to get a hold of you, everything from your zip code, your area code. Not everybody might know that it's 406. You know, you need to include all of that. How to get a hold of you, how to find you on Facebook, how to find you on Instagram, what kind of, do you have gift certificates? Do you gift wrap? Do you have a loyalty club? All of that needs to be on there, everything. Because customers want things fast today. They're willing to shop with somebody. They can get things to them fast and have the services they're looking for. That's communication. That's how you're going to communicate with your customer. You may include a little thank you note in the bag, or you may want to send it to them in the mail and thank them for their business. You know, if your staff have time, you know, to write out little notes, and then you can personalize them and send them out after somebody's made a purchase, stick them in the mail. You know, how exciting that would be. Is it a reminder also about your business? Yes. Is it part of the customer experience? Yes, it's part of that customer experience. Think about a candy store. A little boy goes into a candy store, and the man behind the counter has a big smile on his face and asks him how he can help and how much candy he wants. Little boy tells him. The man gets out his big scoop, and he scoops up and he puts it in the bag, and then he realizes it's too much, so he starts taking it out and removing it until he gets to the desired weight. Think of the little boy that goes into the store and tells the man behind the counter with a big smile how much candy he wants. The man behind the counter has a little scoop, and he keeps on scooping. So think of the perception you're giving your customers. Is that part of the whole experience as well? Certainly it is. It was about 6 months ago. I was taking my car in to be serviced, and I needed oil and lube. All right, typical. Dropped it off, got it back. It was washed, detailed. I don't even know if they did the lube and oil. No, they did. But the perception I got was my car, when I got it back, how clean it was. That was my experience. And I compared that with the time I was in a little restaurant, a darling restaurant, and I went to sit down, and underneath the table, there were those saltine cracker wrappers. And I thought, if this is what the floor looks like, what does the kitchen look like? Is what I thought. So think about the perception. What kind of perception are you giving your customers? I work with the island of Nantucket every single year. And this year I did not, obviously, because of the pandemic, but I go in before their tourist season because the island just explodes during the summertime with visitors. And I go in and I train the staff of the hotels. I go in and I train the cab drivers, as well as all the businesses on the main drag. And when I'm there, I work with the Chamber of Commerce. And I was asked a couple of years ago to go take one of their little tour buses around the island. And I've been going to Nantucket Island ever since my children were little. My husband and I used to take them all the time. And I was asked to take this tour bus and to listen to the driver, what kind of a spiel he gave, if it was actually valuable information he was giving the other riders on the bus, and to give them my opinion. So I did. Well, I love facts, I love trivia. And so I was just, the driver was fabulous. He was wonderful. And as we're driving away from the wharf, he says, I want you all to notice this warehouse here. It says Thomas Macy. And he said, Thomas Macy was one of the first residents on Nantucket Island. And Nantucket Island used to be governed by the British, which I did not realize. And there were 7 families on the island. They put their money together and they bought the island from England. And Thomas Macy, his son went out on a whaling ship because that was the big thing back there, the whale oil, and because they supplied all of the United States with it. And so his son went out on a whaling ship for 5 years. And when he came back, he had a red star tattoo on his hand. Okay. His son decided to open dry goods stores. So he goes to the mainland, Massachusetts, and he goes to the factory towns, thinking this would be the best place to open up a store. Well, they all failed. They all failed. Did he give up? No. He was tenacious. He knew he was going to make it. So he went to New York City. He opened up a store, and he took in $32 his first day, and it became a success story. You gather what it is? Macy's department store. The star is in the logo. And I thought, how fascinating. Well, Macy's is having their problems today now also. I mean, they were closing stores like crazy before, and now since the pandemic, they definitely are. And some of it, but they have such huge leases with the mall properties. And so what they're turning some of their stores into distribution centers for their online orders. So we'll see what happens. But department stores today are completely different department stores when I grew up. When I grew up, they were department stores. They actually had departments. You had your notions, you had your, your fabric department, everything. Not today. Now, basically, it's apparel and cosmetics and perfume and household goods. But one thing that Macy's came up with is that he needed to figure out who his customers were. He was disappointed. It wasn't the factory workers. He thought that was going to be the key, and it wasn't. It was New York City. So figure out who your customers are and your audience. And you've got to play to that audience. You've got to gather them up, preach to them, get them to be your tribe. Because otherwise you just have a hobby. If you're not willing to go after them, and remember the word tenacious and pivot. If you're not tenacious to go after them, you're just going to be by the wayside, and you're going to be one of these stores that closes up and never reopens. So that's what you need to think about today. You've got to make your customer's day before they can make your day. I told you last week about Danny Mayer. Danny Mayer owns 15 restaurants in New York City. And I'm going to repeat this because it's worth it. 15 restaurants in New York City. And one thing that he trains his staff to do, he said, when your customers come in and sit at the table, he said, I want you to notice they are all wearing a sign. They are all wearing a sign. And the sign says, make me feel important. Then it's your job to notice how large the font is and how well it's lit. And so you need to make your customer's day before they can make your day. You can't stand in your store and look at a customer that comes in and says, oh, I'm going to sell that person something. No, you've got to make their day first before they're going to give you their money. And Danny Mayer also tells the staff one thing, that there's always a boss. Every table of diners has a boss. And so I found that extremely, extremely interesting. All right, so what's going to make a customer's day? I was in Blissfield, Michigan, and I was there working with their downtown associations. It's a charming little town right outside of Toledo, Ohio. And I was asked to go in and to visit a new little bakery that had just opened up. And it was darling from the outside. And I was all excited to go in. And I thought, well, I'll go in. I'm going to buy a big sourdough loaf and give it to my client as a little gift. So I went in and there was a gorgeous big sourdough loaf. And so I said to the young man behind the counter, I said, I will take that loaf of sourdough, but could you slice it for me? He said, certainly. So as he's turning around to slice it, he looks at me and says, I am so glad you're buying this because I was ready to throw it out. Well, how did that make me feel? And I thought, you know what, do I dare give this to my customer, to my client or not? You know, and so it's all in the experience, all in the experience. And compare that to when I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was going to stay at the Venue Inn. And the Venue Inn is down in the historic area, right by the Pineapple Fountain, if you've ever been to Charleston. And I got up to the front desk and the young man says, Miss Wold, I'm so sorry, your room is not ready yet. I said, you know, that's fine. I said, I haven't had lunch. I'll go grab something to eat. He said, no, please join us in our restaurant. We have a lovely fare. And I said, well, let me run down the corner. I'm going to grab a paper first. He said, I will go grab you a newspaper. You sit down and make yourself comfortable. So that was my first experience there. Then I'm finishing my meal and I go to pay my bill. And there's a gentleman standing behind me. And he bows to me and he said, Miss Wold, my name is Ed. He said, I have your things in your room. He said, please come. It's my favorite room. And this is a wonderful little hotel that has a bar up on the top, on the rooftop bar. And every room is appointed a little differently with antiques. And he said, please come. This is my favorite room. Well, Ed now is running around the room. He's pulling apart the drapes. He's filling the ice bucket. He's filling the bathtub for me, everything. He's literally running around the room. Ed is in his 80s. And I said, Ed, I said, now tell me, you get this excited when a guest comes to stay? He goes, yes, I do. He said, I love when we have new guests. I said, how long have you been working here? He said, ever since I was a young man. I was 12 years old. What is Ed's position? Bellman. But every time I'm in Charleston, whether I'm staying there or not, or just driving through, I always go by to see Ed. He remembers my name. He remembers my grandchildren's names. He always has pictures of his great-grandchildren to show me, you know, and he's still working there and he still loves it. All right, compare that with the man in the bakery. You know, how different. So it's your staff members. You've got to think about your staff members and how you train them. Remember now that your staff members have a whole new set of jobs to do. You know, they're running bags out to customers. They're doing phone orders, they're packaging up things like they never have done before. So they've got more responsibility. Give each person their own specific job and to train them in that so that things go smoothly. So think about your staff. I was in, we're in Marion, Indiana. And I was working with the downtown and the Chamber of Commerce and the shopping center. They were doing like a little customer service day. And what I was to do was to close out the end of the meeting at the end of the day and basically highlight all the important things that each speaker had said. And so it was absolutely fabulous. And then I had a chance to go to the shopping center and walk around. And one of the gentlemen said, "Hey, Barbara," he says, I sat at the little conference today, and he said, "Please come into my store." And this gentleman had a lovely men's store, suits, ties, shirts, all the accessories to go with it. And I asked him how his business was lately. And he said, he said, "It's been pretty good." He said, "We always do it. We have a very loyal clientele." He said, "But let me tell you a funny story." He said, a few weeks ago, he said, "I always get here at 9. We don't open until 10. And there was a knock on the door. And this is like a strip center, shopping center. And he said there was a farmer standing at the door in his overalls. And I kind of pointed to my watch and said, we open at 10. And I thought, why is he here? He's a farmer. We only sell suits and ties and things like that. And about 15 minutes later, he knocked on the door again. And I pointed to my watch. And finally he said, "You know what?" I thought, "I'm going to go ahead and open. I'll just open up for him and see if I can't help him." Well, what had happened to be was, yes, he was a farmer, but he was going to a funeral that afternoon, and he needed a suit, he needed a shirt, he needed a tie, and he needed a pair of shoes. So he said it was well worth it to open the door. He said, "Now I will always do that when somebody wants to get in a little bit early." So think about when I was putting today's information together. Think about your hours. And this is one thing that I've mentioned before as well. And I try and mention it to everybody during this pandemic. We don't have the same schedules we had before. Things are a little turned around. Some kids are in school, some kids are not. Some people are working from home, some are not. I mean, it's just chaotic in some houses right now. All right. If you've got somebody coming in who wants an appointment, and they can't get there until maybe 8 o'clock or 7:30 after they feed the kids, make an exception. Make an exception and go in, because everybody's got to help everybody out today. Is that going to give the customer a perception of your business? Of course it is. And on these cards that you're putting in their bag, you're going to have appointments on there, letting them know you take appointments. That's going to help out a lot of people today. All right. What about the airline industry? Oh, that's one industry I work with. They're having major problems. Are they going to be able to turn around? It's going to be a long time before they do. And airports, what are they going to do? But the airline industry, one of the top 3 airlines in the world for customer experience are Singapore Airlines, Emirates, and Etihad. Etihad is Abu Dhabi's airline. And every single one, I've flown them all, and they all have fabulous customer service. Well, think of Singapore Airlines. They have been on the list now for over 20 years. Almost been #1 every single year. Singapore Airlines can jam 450 people in a long metal tube, send them down a runway with enough fuel to blow everyone into smithereens, take to the sky, cross the ocean, cross the continent, and at the other end, land nose first and get everybody there safely, and some of their luggage as well. That's Singapore Airlines. Well, Mr. Stampolkowski was on Singapore Airlines. And the stewardess comes up and she's, "Mr. Stampolkowski, would you like a pillow? Mr. Stampolkowski, would you like a cocktail?" Well, Mr. Stampolkowski didn't expect this because he was riding in coach, but it didn't make any difference. He was treated like he was flying in first class. I've had the opportunity of sitting in on Singapore Airlines University. Absolutely fabulous, because Asian people consider themselves to be shy, and they are. I can go shopping in Singapore and I can be followed. Nobody else, the salespeople won't say anything to me. They'll just follow me. Won't say a thing. Well, in Singapore Airlines University, they are taught how to talk to a customer to get rid of that shyness and to be able to speak to anybody that comes onto their plane. Well, and how do they do that? They have them come up with 7 different lines, opening lines. So they can go to the first row on the plane and greet that person, then greet the second person in the next row with a different line, and the next person with a different line. And when they get down to the 8th person, they can start all over again because that person can't hear them. So, yeah, so everybody is trying to create some sort of customer experience in their business. Everyone is. Look at Disneyland. I assume some of you have been to Disneyland, Disney World. And in Disneyland, if you have a question, who do you go to? The trash picker-upper. You figure he knows everything. Well, he does, or she does. They know everything. The trash picker-upper, oh, and you know what the number 3 questions are at Disneyland or Disney World? Number 1 is, where's the bathroom? Number 2 is, where's Mickey? And number 3 is, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? Well, if I was working with a live audience, you'd all laugh because people ask what time the 3 o'clock parade is. That isn't what they mean, though. And the Disney they're called cast members. The Disney cast members are then focused on listening. They know it starts at 3 o'clock, but they want to know where it's going to be when they're over in Frontierland or they're over in another part of the park. When is it going to get to them? That's what they're really asking. Well, this trash picker-upper, you know what his training period is? Oh, when I work with a live group, they'll say 2 days, 4 hours, 6 weeks. 6 weeks, you say? Yes, 6 weeks. Because that trash picker-upper needs to know every single detail of the park, every detail. And the people that work in the parking lot, you know how long their training period is? Same amount of time, except 2 more weeks added, 8 weeks. Because they not only need to know everything that's going on in the park, they need to know about all of the transit opportunities there are around the park and the bus terminals and everything else. They need to know everything. Well, when you compare that to retail, think about the Container Store. And I know you don't have one in Great Falls or in your little immediate area, but the Container Store, every one of their employees knows every aspect of that store. And 1 hour, they may be in the closet fitting department. 1 hour, they may be at the desk taking money and ringing people up. The next hour, they may be carrying packages out. Next hour, they may be a floater. And I mentioned that last week. But they know every aspect of that store. So if you walk up to them and say, well, where is this? Or can you help me with this? They don't say, oh, let me find out for you. They know. So in this time of COVID, in this time of customer expectations, as well as customer experience, you need to know about everything you carry, how you can get it to them, what are the delivery options. You need to know everything. So that's another thing with customer experience. We've got to know what is going on. I am fascinated by staff members and training programs in different stores and different businesses. And I was down in New Orleans and I stopped in to the Desire Oyster Bar on Bourbon Street. And this is the menu from the Desire Oyster Bar. And on the bottom, it says the Desire Foundation Club, saluting those providing service for over 20 years, because every successful operation has a strong foundation. And they have listed all the employees that have been there for over 20 years. And the manager told me he has more names to add. Yes, Well, here I use that example all the time, and because I love that example. And I had one session that I did, I had a gentleman come up to me afterwards and he said, Barbara, he said, I was just in New Orleans for a conference. And he said, I saw the Desire Oyster Bar, but I couldn't go in. I said, well, why not? He said, because I'm a religious man. And he said, the Desire Oyster Bar? And he goes, no, I couldn't go in there. And I said, do you know where the name comes from? And he goes, well, no, where does it come from? And some of you may know the streetcar named Desire. That's a streetcar in New Orleans that goes down to the Garden District and back. But he thought it was a nasty name. All right. So what's going to even keep you alive today? It's going to be your social media selling. This is going to be the key today. You're going to have fewer and fewer people in your store. You're not going to have the crowds like you had last year. And obviously with more and more lockdowns right now, the numbers are increasing every single night in our local news. The numbers are increasing. We still have enough hospital beds, but a lot of areas only have so many hospital beds left for COVID patients. So things are going to start closing down again. They're suggesting that you only eat Thanksgiving dinner with those people you live with, which means I will be eating alone. So things are going to change. All right, so how are you going to do it? You've got to do it with your social media. You've got to have presence. You've got to be on Instagram. You've got to be on Facebook, have a Facebook group. And in fact, the two ladies that I spoke with with Native Life the other day, they said they've gotten more response with their Facebook page by posting. And they've tried posting stories. And I mentioned that before because the story will go to the top of the news feed. It'll disappear in 24 hours, but it'll stay at the top for 24 hours. And they said they have gotten more response with that by just posting a couple times a day. And you can post up to 3 times a day, 4 times a day. That's fine. And they've had more response from that than they have from email blasts. They used to do email blasts. And they used to get a response from that, but not now. Things have changed. So it all depends upon who your customer is. That's why I said, know who your audience is. If your audience is millennials, then and you're maybe Generation Zers, okay, then it's them social media. Then they want a text message. All right, if it's a senior citizen, they may want something in the mail. They may want a phone call. They may want an email blast. A lot of them don't even have computers though. So you've got to realize who your market is. How do they want to be communicated with? You need to talk to your customers. You need to listen and really, really listen. This is one thing I always told my staff. Stop what they're doing. If a customer has a question, to stop what they're doing and give them full attention. Because if you're doing something else, you're not listening. Listen to them. All right. So it's your Facebook, your Instagram, what Snapchat, whatever you're doing with your customers, however they want to be communicated with. In fact, with this Native Life, one of the owners was telling me that they have a lot of older clientele, and that they would prefer, they don't want to do Zoom or anything else, but they prefer to tell them what they want and have it mailed to them. As samples of, they sell all sorts of fabrics and everything for the celebrational Native outfits. And so you need to know who your customer is. All right, so it's your social media, how you're going to get their attention, how you're going to keep their attention. All right, remember doing Facebook Live with a child in it or with a dog. Okay, it works. Have fun. Have fun on your Facebook. Have fun even in all of the collateral that you send your customers, whether it be social media, whether it be print, whether it be on your website. There are lots of news feeds now. They're pop-up ads that come in on the news feeds that I look at. And a lot of them are for loungewear. because as I told you, the apparel stores are not doing well right now because nobody's buying holiday apparel. And one of the ads, I've looked at these loungewear ads that keep on rolling through on these pop-up ads, and all it had was a picture of some of their things just hung on hangers, and then the tagline was "Good in bed." And I thought, how cute! It gets your attention. Got my attention. All right, so taglines work fine. Do something fun. Have a message. Remember, what is your message? All right, so your social media selling, how are you going to do it? You're also going to sell over the phone now. Some of you haven't done that before. You need to add on. You remember I mentioned last week, if any of you sat in the session, bundling. How are you going to bundle? All right, progressive insurance, they're always talking about bundling on their ads. It's bundling, putting things together to make it as easy as possible for the customer. Those that didn't sit in my sessions last week, I'm going to tell you about McDonald's again. McDonald's, decades ago, where you bought a hamburger and they'd say, do you want fries with that? It was automatic. Then they started doing the value meals. All right, was it to help them make more money? Of course. Sure, they're going to make more money, but it was to help the customer make a decision faster. And that's where it was. So you need to bundle items. And this is one thing that I had mentioned to this Native Life group, was because they can't allow people in the store, but they can sell from their curb. And they've been doing a lot of selling from their front window, which is hard as well. But they need to sell a gift package. It's Christmas time. People want to bundle items, maybe items that come together, that work together, and it comes out to $25 or $20. So to figure out what key points are also price points. So you need to also think about your delivery options. That's the key today. You ship, all right, you ship UPS, mail, however, FedEx, however you do that. You deliver. All right, maybe you don't deliver personally, but you can get Uber, you can get Lyft to bring a taxi cab, get them to deliver it. In fact, when I mentioned that a week before last in a seminar I was doing, and a gal said to me, she said, you know what? She said, I thought that was the greatest idea. She said, I never even thought about that. She said, I work now with Yellow Cab, and they make sure that somebody stops by every single day at 4 o'clock. We may have 2 packages from them to deliver. We may have 10. But she said that has worked out so well for us. So you may want to coordinate something with the taxis in your area. Taxis are having a hard time because Uber and Lyft have taken over a lot of their positions. Communication with your customer. And I'm going to mention this again. This is one way you can communicate. Put this in their bag. Make sure it is nice. They're going to take it home. They're going to put it in their desk drawer, their kitchen drawer, whatever. So they have all your services. Go to your printer. They're having tough times right now. They can work out a deal with you. You can maybe do something like this, where they put a little ad at the bottom, put their name at the bottom, courtesy of ABC printers. So you can work things out with people. And we were going to do a partnership presentation on Tuesday, and obviously I had IT problems. I'm sorry, I'm not a genius when it comes to some of these things, and so we're going to do that next Thursday, so a week from today. But partner with your printers in the area. So give something to your customers that they can see all of your services. Make sure it is on your website. And I know that Nathan had said last week that there's help there in Great Falls helping you set up a website. And it can be very simply done today. It doesn't need to be elaborate today. Get something done fast, get your services on it. And also too, you don't need to list every single thing you have in your store. Highlight 10, 20 of the best-selling popular things right now, and change that often. So that's one way you've got to communicate with your customers. Your staff training I'm going to reiterate on that because your staff training is so important today. Also, too, I was reading an article yesterday about how many businesses are having problems with their curbside delivery because they're not doing it correctly or they don't have the opportunity. Think of in the mall. You've got a little store in the mall, in the middle of the mall, and you can't have your employees keep on running out to the parking lot with packages. But if you're on a street and have your front door is on a sidewalk, you have that opportunity. Take advantage and make sure that there's signage. I had mentioned last week that you may have to go to the city and get a special permit. Make sure there's signage. So do what you have to do. But that's one way that you can deliver something that looks nice to the customer. You cannot lose the sight of who you are. You cannot lose that. I mentioned last week about Tom Monahan with Domino's Pizza. And here I was sitting on a plane with Mr. Monahan. And I looked over and I said, I recognized him. And I said, Mr. Monahan, your pizza is my favorite pizza. And he said, no, it's not. He said, the little pizza guy down the street, that's your favorite pizza. We're not in the best pizza business. We're in the business of, it's 5:30, the kids just got back from soccer, they want pizza. We're in the business of, the guys are coming over to watch the game on Sunday, I'm ordering pizza. So don't lose the sight of who you are. And because otherwise you're not going to make it today. Remember how many businesses have closed in the United States since March? Over 160,000. Don't add to that number. You can't just haphazardly open your doors any longer. You've got to think it over and what you need to do to gain customers. I work with Hot Springs, Arkansas. In Hot Springs, Arkansas, it is an urban park. It's an urban national park because of all the bathhouses along Central Avenue. And they started up in the 20s or in the 1910s for all the baseball players. They would come and they used then all of the bathhouses. Well, it became a national park then. I mean, and it is a wonderful, wonderful city, but unfortunately, all the bathhouses are on one side of Central Avenue. On the other side are all the retail businesses. You have the bookstores, the apparel stores, the gift stores, everything else, the restaurants. Yet, they're not open on Sunday. They close at 5 o'clock. You know, if they don't feel like opening up, they don't open up. And it's amazing. They have 650 million people coming a year. I mean, 6.5 million. I was thinking of another figure. 6.5 million visitors a year, and yet they're not taking advantage. So you need to take advantage. Another idea for delivery, it could be a local high school kid could deliver for you. So think about delivery options, how you're going to get that merchandise to them. And if they have it in their hand now in October or early November, they're going to enjoy Christmas so much more and going to be able to enjoy it. Any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you, Barbara. So we have a question here from Patrick and Sasha. They're interns at a medical billing company, and they're curious as how they could use social media to promote medical billing services.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
I mean, tell me how they're, what type of medical billing? They're sending out the bills?
I'm going to say they unmuted, so let's let them explain. Go ahead, guys.
So we're working with, so we started here a couple months ago, and what we do is we are the middleman between medical providers and insurance companies in the billing. So what we do, a lot of our end is making sure that those payments come through for insurance companies, making sure that those payments are authorized so that they can actually get the treatment and that their insurance allows them to see that provider and get the procedure that they need. As I heard you I typed that question here probably about 5-10 minutes ago. Okay. And as you kept talking, I kind of think it started to click a little bit. Who are you trying
to attract?
I'm sorry?
Who are you trying to attract?
The providers, medical providers.
Oh, all right. So doctors and
Physical therapists, doctors,
physical therapists,
surgeons.
dentists.
Mhm,
Okay.
correct.
Um, I have to think about that one. Jolene will give you my email address and I will get back to you on that. I definitely will because I'm going to have to think about that.
Okay.
Because that's right. It's so completely different than so many other businesses. How did you get into this?
Well, there's not a huge economy here in Great Falls, especially for technology and higher education things. So besides doing a trade work, we're working at the medical billing company.
I mean, it sounds interesting. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a little research too and think about that.
Okay, thank you. I want to add one little thing. As like I said, right after I typed that question, you kept digging deeper into don't lose sight of who you are. And I think part of our service is medical billing, but the real reason why we attract the people that we attract into our business, the providers, is that we go the extra mile to make sure that they get their claims fulfilled and that their accounts receivables aren't getting too high. And we go that extra mile to make sure that we call them and stay on top of it.
Right. And that definitely is your message. It definitely is your message because obviously, I mean, and that's one thing that we hear about all the time about how doctors are having problems, getting paid. And then two, how many people, first of all, right now, it was on the news again last night, how many people are not going to the dentist right now? How many people are not getting their physicals right now? So obviously, they're at your medical providers are having a tough time too. Than your physical therapist. I know I had physical therapy after I had my knee and my hip replaced. And right now, I'm glad I didn't have it now because I don't think I'd want to go to physical therapy right now. And so that's a tough one.
Yeah. I think though, I like that you honed in on that part of Barbara's message that is, you need to be true to who you are and really key in on that and be true to your tribe. Earlier on, she was talking about find out who your customers are and who your audience and your tribe are. So when you identify exactly who your tribe is and identify those providers that aren't currently with you, perhaps that's your target list, and then that's who you want to bring into the tribe. But knowing that strong message. If you have any other questions, please put them into the chat box. I really, some of the key things that I took away, you always hear, don't ask stupid questions, but go ahead. Barbara kicks it off with, or you always hear, no questions stupid, but Barbara kicks it off with, don't ask stupid questions. But then when she elaborated into that, may I help you? Well, yeah, of course you can help me. I'm looking for something. Flip that around and use that space. Much like in an earlier session, Barbara, you mentioned that behind the cash register is the most valuable space. That first interaction with your client, rather than asking them a redundant question, use it. Use that space. I really like that tip.
Yes, but just as you said, don't lose sight of who you are. And because now during tough times, people trying to be everything. You can't be everything for your customer. You've got to have that narrow focus and keep that. You all have competition. And so you've got to keep that narrow focus and be the very best you can be in your category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just so important. Perceptions, when you address perceptions, just absolutely fantastic. That's something that I've taken away from previous seminars, but it's just so vital and people don't realize how vital it is. That saltine wrapper on the floor, immediately your perception is, well, if they're not cleaning under the table that I see, where else aren't they cleaning? I get that same perception with bathrooms, right? If the bathroom at a establishment is not clean, I definitely don't want to eat there.
Well, and talking about perception and thinking about the airlines, as I mentioned, the airlines today, and I've flown Etihad and Emirates many, many times, as well as Singapore Airlines. And I've also flown Air India because I've done a lot of work in India. And Air India, and I'm not being snobbish here, but my clients either have to send me first or business class. I'm not sitting in the back of the screaming kids for 25 hours. But so here it was in first class on Air India, and my seat didn't recline. So I said to the stewardess, I said, my seat doesn't recline. She goes, oh, we have that problem with lots of our seats. Just pick another seat. And I'm thinking, if their seats don't work, what's their maintenance like on the plane? And that was the first thing I thought of. I mean, but
Right?
yeah, so I mean, it's perception, because if the stewardess is all Singapore Airlines, their outfits are wonderful, and Etihad and Emirates, and it just, you feel classy just getting on. And I love all the traveling that I've done, and I love to see how people dress when they travel. It's amazing, amazing to me. It looks like they were cleaning out their garage and decided to take a trip. But
Yeah.
and who knows when this is all going to come back, traveling. Business travel is down, because I get all of the newsletters daily from all the meeting planners and convention planners. And, I mean, nobody's traveling. Nobody's traveling. And they say travel is going to be up for the holidays this year as opposed to road trips. I don't think I'd want to get on a plane right now. And my daughter just came back from Las Vegas, and she said the plane was packed. She said, because there are fewer flights. So the planes are packed. And she said, they're asking people to, give up their seat and take another flight. And she said, some people had masks on, some did not. And she was flying United. And so it's interesting, because it's all retail. It's all retail.
Yeah. All sales.
So, make a list with your staff. What all is important to you to create more business? What are your customers asking for? Talk to your customers, listen. And as you said, don't ask stupid questions, which I love, because we get those all the time. That's why I mentioned, that the Germans now are starting to stock up on toilet paper. You could use that as their opening line when a customer comes in. Did you see what was on the news? As Germans are stocking up on toilet paper. And, just have fun with it. You've got to make that relationship with the customer. So it's building a relationship should be on your list as well. And you're going to have to build them in a completely different way now. You've got to put more effort into it. You've got to go after them. As I mentioned again, otherwise, you've just got a hobby.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. We're such a pleasure as always. And I know that learning by example is one of your key elements, and it's getting us to take those blinders off and look around and take those ideas that we love and implement them.
You've got to. In fact, when I was back in Newport, Rhode Island last year at this time, and which I love, which is a wonderful little historic city. And I had noticed something, and a couple of weeks later, my client had emailed me something, and I said, oh, I noticed that. And I mentioned her. She goes, how did you notice that? And I said, remember I told you, I don't wear blinders.
Exactly.
So take those blinders off.
Perfect. Well, we welcome you all to join us for our next session on next Tuesday at 2. And we'll be talking about moving customers and tourists to advocates. Satisfied isn't good enough. We want to wow people. This will be a high impact session for you. Today took away a lot of great takeaways. Barbara, thank you so very much. Thank you all for your time to join us. And I hope that you all found one item that you can, at least one, that you can implement in your business that will help you increase your sales and your customers.
I want to say one thing before I get out of the meeting. Do you notice that I use all different examples from all different types of businesses and everything else? And so do the same, because you can learn from any type business. Look at what they're doing, look at what they're trying, and you can learn from them. And to try something new.